Presentation of a history and appreciation of art and design scheme. This scheme will be based on Surrealism. The scheme consists of 4 lessons and aimed at a 5th year group. The scheme aims to build students' knowledge and appreciation of the Surrealist art movement, enable students to name and discuss Surrealist artists and specific artwork, comment on the colour, composition and style of artwork critically using new terminology, and use evaluation and reflection in class discussion. The rationale behind this scheme is ultimately to prepare students for a possible exam question on Surrealism and give them the tools needed to understand, answer and engage with the 50-mark Leaving Cert exam question. It was a requirement by the art teacher to cover this topic with these students. The learning outcomes have been broken up between the 4 lessons. By the end of the scheme, students will be able to do the following. Lesson 1. Define Surrealism and recognise works from the Surrealist art movement using buzzwords, contextualisation and new terminology. Lesson 2. Recall at least 2 artists that worked in Surrealism and be able to describe their works in terms of the title of the piece, date completed, medium and measurements. Lesson 3. Demonstrate how to describe and analyse a work of Surrealist art, sketching examples. Lesson 4. Respond to an exam question about Surrealism at Leaving Cert level using illustration and engaging in critical thinking. The rubrics of this scheme is directly taken from the learning outcomes. The students will be graded between bands A to D, ranging from excellent to unsatisfactory. The rubrics look at the assessment criteria for each grade category. This consists of observation and memorization, analytical thinking and writing skills, understanding and attitude, and working at exam standards. Then the rubrics will assess for the evidence of learning for the following: how well students identify with questions and respond accordingly, how students analyze questions and artwork in a systematic way, how well students apply knowledge to new learning ideas or abstract concepts, and how effectively they can evaluate their answers both written and spoken, how readily and thoroughly students reflect on what is being learnt, and finally the effort they put into class and set tasks. Students used exercises in binary opposites and discussion analysis tasks to practice looking at artwork and how to discuss them and annotate them with key information. The main 3 recognised Surrealist artists looked at were Ren Magritte, Salvador Dali and Max Ernst. In the delivery of these lessons, the resources available in the classroom were used to employ a variety of methodologies so that all learning types could be catered for. The resources led to the plan of action for the scheme in terms of learning strategies. The use of video, internet, YouTube clips, and PowerPoint were used in consideration of the resources at hand. Specific teaching and learning strategies included the use of YouTube and projector, reference books, worksheets and templates, motivational games and activities, teacher demonstration, and the use of whiteboard for instructional techniques. The students collaborated in a variety of ways, engaging in group work, pair work, and individual work, group projects, discussion exercises, whole group analysis of artwork. The methodologies employed intended to attend to cognitive, visual, audio, and verbal learning to enrich the learning of the students overall. The room layout of each lesson allowed students to collaborate in pairs or groups at certain times during lessons. When instruction giving, the front of the room was used, the projector being behind this. Pacing the room while students worked in groups and standing at the back to observe progress allowed for small group questioning and individual attention for differentiation methods. This group are less communicative and often reluctant to share ideas in whole group settings, so this layout helped to provide opportunity to encourage a mix of student interaction. Desks were moved around to accommodate this and get students moving. Some examples of completed worksheets and tasks by students showing the various teaching methodologies in play included question worksheet with video, a drawing game for a surrealist creature, blank fill revision exercise, poster making in pairs, and artist profile sheets. The assessment method for the scheme was a past exam question. This assessment aimed to combine all the activities and learning strategies of the previous lessons and prepare students for examination. For the final class, a 40-minute exam question was set for students to attempt to answer using their posters as a guide. The exam question was read out and briefly discussed. Students restated what they thought the question was asking and highlighted key words. The marking scheme was displayed and discussed briefly. This method adheres to the learning outcomes as the rationale behind the scheme was to be able to successfully respond to an exam question on surrealism. Within the class, there is a selection of students that will need to be considered for differentiation. Strategies will mainly consist of similar aspects for all three categories: use of repetition, revision techniques beginning and concluding each lesson, visual aids both on the board, in poster format and in handouts, clear bullet point format worksheets, consistent praise and encouragement on completed tasks and effort, color-coded keyword charts, checklists of tasks, a variety of pair and group work, and finally learning from video, audio and discussion tasks. Conclusively, the main strengths of this scheme were variations of tasks, question types, and worksheets to accompany videos. These techniques encourage students to absorb information about surrealism, apply it to discussion exercises in class, and above all, stimulated art appreciation. The scheme was successful in motivating students, primarily through ad hoc discussion, peer pairing, visual stimulus, and student interaction. The scheme fell down in areas, particularly in terms of differentiating for the EFL students who lacked the language ability required to keep up with the topics and rates of discussion planned in class. Group work, although stimulating, could be disruptive at times. Tasks should have been kept completely specific. Explanations, due to repetitions and questioning, meant a good portion of the lesson was teacher talk time. Students were often static throughout the lesson, which contributed to a lack of attention. If the scheme was to be run again, I would ensure that the binary opposites exercise was followed with how to implement analysis into an exam question through a written task and an annotated illustration task. More emphasis was needed on considering the main elements to describing artwork, such as colour, composition, tone. More time should have been allocated on looking at the exam question before giving it to the students, to clarify language used and marking breakdown. Students that did not have a poster were disadvantaged for the exam, so allowing the poster to be used in the final lesson could be reconsidered. Further strategies were needed to get students talking, questioning and discussing more in class. Students should have been allocated pairs more effectively for differentiation reasons. Vocabulary lists should be distributed for each student to refer to, encouraging the practice of new terminology. Conclusively, I feel the strongest aspect of this scheme was the variety of activities and methodologies used. The students seemed to absorb information collectively from these lessons, were able to recall information in revision, and became more confident at attempting an exam question. What most needed improving was lesson planning in terms of time and task management. The scheme would have been more successful in terms of learning by using vocabulary sheets at all times to get students using buzzwords, alternative methods for getting the students to talk, reflect, and question more between each other, including more written work practice, however tedious, and not trying to fit too much into one lesson plan, setting achievable goals for all students.